So we're in the front of the bus, and I don't know, maybe it was a travel day. And when you're on a travel day in a bus, you basically get up out of bed, you leave the hotel, and you'll do nothing but travel. So you could be in a bus for 8 hours, 10 hours, getting to the next place. And that was usually the time when you had the best hangs with Maynard, because you were just killing time all day in a little bus, right? And well, not a little bus, but it was a bus, and everybody was close, and you were talking. So Maynard would sit up front on the right, and then the road manager was up front on the left, right behind the driver. And I was right at that time. I think I was right behind Maynard, and then the guys. Each guy had like their own. Or we had it set up where we took out every other seat. We bought plywood, we bought foam, and two people could share an area. We called it an area. And a lot of bands would travel. Everybody has their own seat, and that's cool. and what you wind up doing is you wind up figuring out your position. If you could sleep on a bus, what determines how long you could live on the road is how you can sleep on that bus. Some guys would sleep on the floor. There were some guys who would sleep in the overhead rack if they could fit, if they were small enough. And there was, but you figured it out. You bent your leg a certain way, you put your coat behind your head. You had to figure it out because you spend a lot of time sleeping on a bus. And if you don't have it figured out, you're going to get exhausted to the point where you really can't think anymore. You get cloudy, you never feel right. So anyway, we decided we'd pop out every other seat, buy plywood, get some foam, wrap it in a sheet. Everybody got their blankets, and as long as you keep your hygiene right, and no shoes on the bed, you can actually share with another person, and you sort of sleep head to toe, and you could lay straight. And what's good about that is if you could lay straight, then you can sleep, and it was great. And the bus would kind of lull you to sleep. So all of a sudden, being on the road went from being really something that would exhaust you, you can actually catch up on sleep, and it was cool. Later on, Maynard had actually a sleeper bus that had regular bunks in it for everybody, but we had to make it out of like a regular bus, regular like Melanie bus or anyway, Eagle bus. So Melanie was the company. That's right. Anyway, so we're traveling and we're just hanging out, and on these big travel days, who's writing, who's talking to who's just watching something, and who's it was before cell phones, and Maynard every once in a while he'd take out his trumpet and he would just up front. Nobody would really practice on the bus, kind of couldn't, you couldn't impose that. But every now and then Maynard, like, he'd put a mute in and like a practice mute, and he would play just to keep his chops going. So we were up front, and I don't know how it got started. But this happened, and I thought, man, this should have been the clinic I thought Maynard should have done. Not the clinic he did where he talks about air, the yoga breathing and all that, which is cool and all that. But I think he came up with that way after he knew what he was doing. I mean, he was already playing high. He kind of came up with that, and that's what he did. But what he should have done, I think, was this, and I don't know how. Maybe he looked at it like it was an ego thing, so he wouldn't have done it. But we're in the front of the bus, and he has his trumpet out, and somehow we're talking about his influences. Like, who did you like, boss? Who'd you like growing up? And he goes, I love Bobby Hackett. Bobby Hackett, great guy, got a beautiful little sound, and real lyrical, and never played really high, and alcoholic, but alcoholic, but great guy. And then he put his I said, what did he sound like? Or somebody, and Maynard picked up his trumpet, and he played like Bobby Hackett, and he just played like improvised some blues or something, but in the way Bobby Hackett would. And what he did is his sound shrunk, and his time feel was different. He didn't tongue as hard. I mean, he was like a completely different player. It was cool. It wasn't just like, oh, that's Bobby Hackett. It was like, wow, boss, that's pretty good. And then somebody said about Fats Navarro, and Maynard goes, oh, Fats, he was so fluent. And then Maynard improvised some blues, and it was like a whole another guy. It was like maybe a little louder, very legato, not like Maynard played. And Maynard completely, sound changed, kind of warmed up. And then somebody said Miles, and he goes, "Oh, Miles, I love Miles. Miles. People don't realize, we really got along." There's a great photo of Miles and Maynard like laughing together. So Maynard grabs a Harmon mute that Dizzy gave him, because Dizzy had, I guess, the line on these great Harmon mutes. Anyway, Maynard had this Harmon mute that he really loved that Dizzy gave him. He put it in, and he's playing like Miles. I was thinking, oh my God. I said, boss, this is great, because this is how you learn this music, is you copy the players you love. So here's Maynard up front imitating Bobby Hackett, Fats Navarro, Miles Davis, and who else? I think we picked one other person. Somebody picked Bunny Berrigan, who did, he was the one who did I Can't Get Started. And Maynard did Bunny Berrigan. Maybe that's the one who was the alcoholic, man. We played like somebody, and he went, "Great player, I love them. Oh, beautiful sound. I'm alcoholic." But anyway, so Maynard, played like Bunny Berrigan. It was great, and he did a couple. I think he did about 5, 6 guys, but they weren't just like kind of like those guys. They were almost like completely like those guys. So his sound changed, his approach changed, the way he phrased the licks were kind of the same, because the licks were Maynard's licks, but the approach was different, the sound was different, the tonguing was different, the time feel was different, the way the mood was different, and the sound was different. That's what was kind of like frightening, was that when you have a sound like Maynard, it has that sizzle in the whole thing. When he copies somebody else who doesn't have that, he's able to get it like that. And I always thought, I told him, I said, boss, that's your clinic. That's the clinic. Because when you teach students how to play, or teach anybody how to play, the idea is you copy the masters. Everybody does that. Artists, you paint, you're going to look at like Michelangelo, you're going to look at Picasso, you're going to look at Monet, you're going to look at all those guys. If you want to write really well, you're going to look at how great writers write. If you want to play any instrument, you study how guys, but it's the same thing, And Maynard could pull all these guys out, and from mixing all these guys together, he came up with his own thing. Plus his talent for the range and all that business. I mean, he came out with his own sound, but he could imitate them all. And I remember saying, "Boss, this is the clinic, this yoga breath thing." But if people heard you do that, it's so clear and it's so out front, and it would be something that people don't even associate with you. I mean, no one would think that Maynard would sound just like Miles, just like Bobby Hackett, Fats Navarro, Miles, and Bunny Berrigan, like all his favorite guys, So it was great to hear him imitate that stuff, and I think we were throwing guys at him, and he was, Clifford. He did Clifford too, like just real beboppy, not necessarily loud like Maynard would play it, but he backed off sound wise, and he played some just like great bebop. Put his tongue pretty much. If you listen to Clifford, you hear a lot of like a lot of tonguing in there, not that. Maynard started to do that. It was just great. But anyway, it was great because it's what we always teach, and here's a guy like Maynard demonstrating it, and it kind of shows the ingredients that went into who he became. But I always thought, man, that would be the clinic. That would be the clinic. And I remember one time we did give a clinic, and I just hinted around. I said, "Hey, boss, would you be into doing that? We can ask you. We'll be like up there with you on the microphone, and we'll ask you to play like certain guys. You think, would you be into that?" And he's like, well, let me think about it. Yeah. Which meant it's never going to happen. Think about it all you want. But good stuff. That would have been the clinic. Or if he even did it once and someone could have filmed it. And you know what? All these great guys can do it. All these great players can imitate the guys that they love. Phil Woods was able to do it. There's a nice, if you go to YouTube and you type in Joey DeFrancisco, God, he has so many videos, but he imitates about 5 or 6 different organ players. It's the same process. I mean, there's no magic to it, but it's just the way we all kind of do it. But to sit down and sort of visit your masters intentionally, and getting all excited, that it was just perfect. Anyway, Maynard, he could imitate. He knew what he was doing. He knew who he was listening to. It was great to hear that. Good stuff.